I'm Bambi Francisco for Vader TV, the network for innovators. Well, hi5 is one of the largest social networks around the world. It ranks #1 in 26 countries across Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Well, joining me to talk about why hi5 is such a hit overseas and the future of this 5-year-old company is Ramu Yalamanchi, who's the founder and CEO. Ramu, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You've been around since 2003. You have 80 million registered users, mostly from around the world. What is it about hi5 that makes it so attractive to users outside the U.S.?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the first thing is when we actually launched the service, we had a very international focus in terms of what we're trying to do. So the original hi5, as you see it today, launched in late 2003, and we looked at the U.S. market, and at the time, the U.S. market was sort of flattening in terms of growth. So I think you were seeing like single-digit growth during 2003 and around that time. So one of the things we looked at is we said there are really two areas that were particularly interesting to us. One is how can we use the web to better connect people, and kind of what's the evolution of personal communications. And the second thing we looked at is international, and where all the new internet users were coming online. Mm-hmm. So if you look today, about 80% of the users on the internet are actually in international markets, mm-hmm. And 20% are in the U.S. And if you looked at that same number about a decade ago, it was actually flipped.
Now, do you make your money through advertising?
Yeah.
And how do the advertisers like that international kind of, I mean, how do you even get advertisers to target to such an international
to our markets?
Yeah.
So because we did this from a very early stage, this is one of the things we had to figure out. In terms of the company and you know when it got profitable, we raised about $250,000 for the company when we initially started it. In about a year into launching hi5, we got the company profitable in about October of 2004. And the way we were able to do that is by leveraging a set of partnerships around the world. So today we have well over half a dozen partnerships in places like Portugal, in Eastern Europe, in Latin America, in Thailand. Mm-hmm. And what we've done is we've gone to these local markets where we have significant traction and traffic, mm-hmm. and we found a partner to represent our traffic exclusively to that market.
So when you say a partner, you're talking about an advertising network partner,
a media,
someone to go out there and
yeah. So it varies.
Get ads.
It varies by market. In Portugal, for example, we have a partnership with Portugal Telecom. Mm-hmm. In Eastern Europe, we have a partnership with a company called Arbo Media. So yeah, by partner I mean they take the traffic and the opportunity to monetize hi5 through advertising, mm-hmm. and they have the exclusive representation in that particular market.
Where do you get the highest CPM, and what's the fastest growing country for ads?
For ads, okay. So for the first question, the CPMs vary around the world. So I mean, if you kind of look at it very broadly, I mean the U.S. definitely is a little bit higher in terms of CPMs, but all of the other markets that we're in, so the European markets and the Spanish-speaking markets are actually coming up pretty fast. So we see much less of a difference today than we might have seen 2 or 3 years ago.
Where are you generating most? It's all ad supported.
It's all ad supported.
So
yeah.
What are your ad CPMs for the user profiles for those 80 million profiles, and where do you derive the most ad revenue?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of markets that we derive revenue from, so our big markets are the Spanish-speaking market across the globe. So we're the #1 social network in Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, a bunch of different places in Latin America. And in terms of just where we're deriving revenue, the mix of revenue has changed over time. So initially, when we first launched the service, and there was a smaller base, and the CPMs were typically higher in the U.S. and U.K. Today, what we're seeing is the majority of our revenue actually comes from all of the different international markets, and so the Spanish-speaking market is one of the biggest on the service, and so mm-hmm. that generates a fairly significant amount of revenue, and then that's followed by places like Portugal and places like Thailand now.
But so in the U.S., what are the CPMs for those profile pages? Are they like 50 cents?
They range, yeah. So I mean, there's different rates for like if you're looking at there's brand advertisers, right? Yes. And the brand advertisers may be a smaller percentage of the total advertising on the site, mm-hmm. But the CPMs may range from several dollars to $15 or $20 based on the type of campaign, the amount of targeting, the specific audience that they're trying to reach.
So they do certain campaigns, and that's
they're doing specific campaigns. For example, in the last year or so, we did a campaign for T-Mobile and one for Singular, where there were very specific campaigns. The T-Mobile campaign involved bringing Chingy to help us run a contest that involved both T-Mobile. It involved Chingy kind of having users develop a wrap for a T-Mobile specific campaign, and then picking a winner. And the winner actually was able to perform in a performance for Chingy. And so in that type of a campaign, what the advertiser's getting out of it is engagement with our consumers, right? Both by submitting content to hi5 and then also getting consumers to come and consume it. And so for that type of a campaign, advertisers are willing to pay much higher CPM.
What are they paying for a campaign like that?
I mean, it ranges, right? So it'll range from, like I said, several dollars to up to, based on the targeting, $15, $20. It depends on the depth of the campaign.
Okay. What are you, with 80 million registered users and that much traffic, what kind of revenue are you generating?
Well, so we don't publicly talk about the revenues of the business
Ballpark.
right now. Yeah, well, we don't publicly talk about the revenues of business. But as I mentioned, we got the business profitable. Today we got the business profitable in October of 2004, and then we've been running entirely on advertising since the time that we launched the business. You
raised $35 million. Are you profitable now? Are you spending it all? Now? Why did you raise $35 million? You're already profitable.
We raised capital to help us expand into more markets. Before we raised money for the business, the way we were looking at the business was, here's how much money we're going to make in 3 months or 6 months, and then we would take kind of that as the horizon for how far we could invest into the business. And so by raising capital, what it does is it allows us to take a much longer term view in the business.
Sure.
It allows us to get into markets that we might not have otherwise considered.
Now, with that $35 million, what was your valuation?
That's something that we don't publicly disclose. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the milestones you've achieved since releasing OpenSocial?
Yeah, OpenSocial has been really exciting for us. So there have been a number of milestones there. So one is the platform went out in early April. Today there's over 600 applications on the platform. 50% of the active users have at least one application, and on average, users have about 3 applications on their profiles. We've done, I think there's 15 applications that have over 1 million installations, and on average, we've been getting about 1 million new installations every day. So it's
How
been
many?
1 million
Wow.
new installations every day.
That's
so
amazing.
it's been really exciting from a number of standpoints. It's been terrific for the developers that have built applications to work on hi5. It's also been great for users. So it really helps with a couple of key things we're trying to provide. So one is it makes it easier for users to interact and to communicate on hi5. And second, it just provides a component of fun, right? So they were coming to hi5 in the past for staying connected with their friends, for seeing what their friends are doing on hi5, and also for entertainment. And so it helps us to reinforce all those product principles that we've been building towards. Okay.
So you talked about raising $35 million, so you have a long-term view. What is the long-term objective, and do you want to be like maybe MySpace? Does it make sense to do what MySpace did, which was be basically part of a larger media property, or are you maybe going sort of Facebook, where you're going to be standalone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the way we look at the world is we raise capital so we can continue to build a business and to really hit milestones around what do we want to do in different markets, what kind of a product and user experience do we want to provide to our consumers, really thinking about it along those lines. In terms of what happens to the business, it's whether there's what kind of exit we ultimately have. The way we look at that question is there's things that we control, and there's things like an ultimate IPO for the business or some type of M&A, and those are things that we'll look at further down the line. Right now, really, we raise the capital to invest into the business, build our traction in more markets, and also to provide a product that is satisfactory to our users.
Well, apparently it's pretty satisfactory. You have 74% addicts on your site.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll be talking about that in our next interview, which will be on how consumers are changing their behavior online. But thank you so much for the business update.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Ramu Yalamanchi. She's the CEO and founder of hi5. I'm Bambi Francisco.